It was surprising to see quite how much she participated in the carriage processions, because they're not particularly enjoyable experiences by all accounts. In many ways, this was really the perfect moment for her to reappear, because she was at the heart of her family. They have this shared experience now. They spent some time together while they were both at the same hospital, and maybe it's some kind of tacit show of support on the King's behalf towards Kate.
Hello, I'm Matt Wilkinson and welcome to our show Royal Exclusive. With me today is Hello Magazine's Royal Editor, Emily Nash.
Hi, Matt.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Excellent. Now look, the biggest story this week is not just, people in royal circles that are talking about it. Everybody around the world is discussing this. It was Princess of Wales at Trooping the Colour. Now, it's not a comeback, is it? I think we're told it was an appearance by the Princess of Wales, a much needed appearance. We've all been waiting very patiently to see her, but it felt like a comeback because we've been waiting so long.
It did. I mean, the way I've been couching it is a return to the spotlight, not really a return to her full working schedule, but this has really been about her showing people that she's doing well. As she said in her statement, she's making progress and able to now start taking part in some events. But it has been really clear to us that this is on a case-by-case basis. So it's very much depending on how she feels. And she said she feels that she has good days and bad days. Saturday was clearly a very good day for her. But I think people now will understand that we shouldn't expect to see her all the time, but we may see her popping up a bit more in the next few months.
They were asked us not to speculate for several weeks before, but there were rumours that she might appear at Trooping. We were maybe considering she might appear on the balcony, she might appear on the carriage. Do you think that Trooping was the right scenario, the right event for her to I say not a comeback, but for her to appear back in the spotlight?
Look, I think it's a really good question. We discussed it ourselves, in the last few weeks. And I think most of us thought, an appearance on the balcony would have been an easy win, really, for her and for the palace, to show that she was okay, part of the family, but it wouldn't have put too much pressure on her. So I think, it was surprising to see quite how much she participated in the carriage processions, because they're not particularly enjoyable experiences by all accounts. And I think seeing her with her children made it all become clear, and we've heard this from the very start. The way that she made her announcement of the cancer diagnosis was all, focused around her children and their well-being. And once we saw her in the carriage with them, and then watching from the Major General's office and again on the balcony, it all made sense. In many ways, this was really the perfect moment for her to reappear, because she was at the heart of her family.
Well, I mean, there was a thought that maybe she could, come to a small enclosed engagement with just a couple of photographers, a couple of journalists, and maybe a small charity or something like that. But here, because I was nervous when I heard that, because we had a briefing, didn't we, on Friday afternoon? We had a message and a phone call. Please tune into this this video call, and we were
not what anyone had planned for Friday afternoon.
Exactly, like 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. And so that's when they broke the news. And initially I was quite surprised, because it's such a big deal.
It's a big ask.
But maybe that's the point. Everybody, the whole world, got to see the Princess of Wales, rather than just a few people. It was on telly. If you were there, you could see it. It was beamed around the world. So it's kind of job done, I suppose.
And let's not forget, there have been some pretty crazy rumours and speculation on social media surrounding other videos and other photographs that they've released. And this was, you couldn't really argue with the fact that she was there in the flesh, being driven down the Mall.
A lot of people have been quite quiet, I've seen.
Yeah, it's funny that, isn't it?
On certain social media sites. I don't think they got an answer to the fact that, she did attend. Knowing the Princess of Wales, like, you've obviously worked on engagements with her for years and years and years, seen her in action. How do you think, is it possible to maybe guess how she would have felt about attending Trooping, because it was such a big deal for us? Do you think it was such a big deal for her?
Yeah, I think it probably was. It's a huge moment in the royal calendar, but it is a family moment. It's the King's official birthday, but it is really a family gathering at the heart of it. And even though they don't all appear on the balcony, there are a lot of people behind the scenes in the centre room and elsewhere in the palace. So it is a big family occasion, and she would absolutely want her family to be there. And if that meant her being there as well to support them, then I think it was a big deal for her, absolutely.
I think you're right. I think it's key, the fact that once the children were going to attend, then who would have gone in the carriage?
Well, that was the question I was asking last week and not getting any answers on, and that's when I started to think, maybe she might make an appearance.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the balcony, I thought could have been the prime spot for her to kind of appear. But there was an atmosphere on the Mall and in Horse Guards Parade when she arrived, wasn't there? There was almost like gasps, really, you know, to actually see her for the first time.
I genuinely think people were really touched to see her and relieved, because collectively there's been this real concern for her. You know, we've heard from the palace that she's had thousands upon thousands of letters. She's herself spoken about how touched she's been by this outpouring of support. And I think that's what draws people to the Mall anyway, for Trooping the Colour. They want to see the royals. And it was just such a real treat for people who were there. You know, not just they planned to go, not expecting her to make an appearance. And there she was.
Now, we've been asked for weeks, as I said earlier, to not speculate. But they did say in this briefing, and that's been reported since, that she may, I'm trying to remember the exact choice of words, but she may well choose to attend other events this summer. We know that she didn't appear at the Garter Day ceremony. Last year she appeared in a carriage with William, and she's not going to appear at Royal Ascot. Where else do you think we might see the Princess of Wales, without putting pressure on her?
No, because I think it's important to say that. And I think it's also important to say that even if we do get wind of her attending some, I suppose we shouldn't really take anything for granted, because it will all depend on how she feels on any given day. I mean, I'd love to see her pop up at Wimbledon, because we know that's something she really enjoys. And of course, she's been advised to focus on the things that she enjoys as part of her recovery. So, you know, that would be great for her. It would be lovely to see her and the children there again this year if she's feeling well enough. But again, these things will be decided, I think, probably pretty much at the last minute.
Yeah, no, I think with Wimbledon is a nice idea, and it's interesting because in her statement, I think she said that she'd been asked to, you know, enjoy certain aspects of life and school life as well, which I thought was quite interesting.
Absolutely, because I think especially when you're facing a diagnosis like that, it really puts things in perspective, and your family is, of course, you know, absolutely going to be your priority. And so spending time with the children, going to watch them at, you know, at sports matches or at concerts or whatever it is. I've got a couple of kids, as the kind of thing that you kind of get roped into a lot. And I think she's probably been able to, you know, see a silver lining in what she's going through, if it means that she's doing a bit more of that. You
mentioned about the rumours or the vile, you know, speculation that we've seen online. And we were also told that, I think the wording was that it had been unhelpful to the Prince and Princess of Wales. It's quite clear that they would, of course, they don't live in a bubble. You know, they would have been aware of what people were saying about them.
I think so. I mean, they do read quite a lot. And I think however much you might try to ignore things, there was a time earlier this year where the Princess of Wales's whereabouts was, you know, the top discussion on pretty much every WhatsApp conversation in the UK, as far as I could tell, and overseas. And interestingly, particularly driven by a few social media accounts in America. So it's interesting to hear the, you know, guidance being given about that again. And it's a really tricky one for the palace to manage, isn't it? Because if they issue regular denials about things or engage in these, then in many ways it's just giving the rumours more oxygen. So on the one hand, I think it's good for them to be able to say once in a while, you know, these are the boundaries, that's enough, please. But again, you and I hear things all the time that, you know, we have to be very careful about.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've occasionally felt like I'm a spokesman for Kensington Palace, because I've had...
You should be.
I've had, European TV, European magazines asking me, are these rumours are true? And I've had to go back and say, well, of course she's not in... I think there was a story recently, she was in a hospital in Houston or in Texas or something like that. Just plainly wasn't true. Yeah,
and I think a lot of these things can be traced back to someone making a TikTok in their bedroom. So you just need to be very careful about where you're getting your information from.
It's crazy at the moment. I just wonder if people will, at some stage, you know, look back on this period of time, the treatment of the Princess of Wales, and you know, look at their behaviour. If you look back at, you know, the late 90s or the mid 90s with Princess Diana, and I think there was a real kind of change in the culture within the media there, and even I'd maybe not go too deep into it, but even with lots of articles at the time written about Duke and Duchess of Sussex, you know, there's a bit of introspection towards that. But this time it's you know, the people on social media or the journalists that don't have any access to the kind of information that maybe need to look at themselves.
Yeah, and I think it's also really important to stress that in this country there's very strong regulation around people's medical privacy that people perhaps watching overseas might not be aware of, because there certainly seems to be a real appetite for more health updates, and that's just something we're not going to be told or get into really in this place.
Well, she looked great.
She looked fantastic.
Cheered everyone up. We might see her again in the future. Stay tuned. There's loads more to come in the rest of the show.
The fact that he's out there more and the fact that we've seen Kate in action herself really suggests that they're making really good progress. Maybe they'd had a word with Louis and talked about trying to rein it in somewhat, because he did look like he was concentrating quite hard. But at the Major General's office, he pulled out dance moves to Highland Laddie.
How was Trooping the Colour for you, though? Because one of the key elements was I managed to walk down the Mall.
We're going to talk about the rain?
We're going to talk about the rain. I got stuck in the rain walking down the Mall with an umbrella. My whole trousers were soaking wet. But the sun came out just as the royal family emerged on the balcony.
Doesn't it always work that way, though? It's incredible.
I think someone had a word. Someone put a call in. And that says the rain stopped. But do you think we should read anything into significance, a potential significance of the King standing next to the Princess of Wales?
Yeah, so we've been thinking about this a lot this week as well over at Hello, and it's interesting because I don't think it's particularly choreographed, but just the fact that they have naturally arranged themselves in that way and the way they were chatting to each other, there's obviously a great deal of affection between them, but they have this shared experience now. We know that, you know, they spent some time together while they were both at the same hospital, and I think that while they were already quite close, this can only have brought them even close together. So yeah, maybe it's some kind of tacit show of support on the King's behalf towards Kate, and I'm sure he was really happy that she was back there alongside them all.
Do you not think it's choreographed? I thought it was deliberate. That was my initial thing, because I always imagine that there's almost a place where they have to stand. Of course, the King stands or the monarch stands in the middle, and it was that they were kind of almost organised so that they would be put next to each other. I could be wrong. It's just my reading of the situation.
Yeah, look, I think sometimes in the past I've had a sense that it definitely has been. I didn't feel like that so much this year, but maybe I need to go back and watch again.
Well, maybe they just naturally gravitated towards each other on the balcony. That might.
Well, there are fewer of them now, so they can move around a little bit more freely. You know, when in the days when there were sort of 30 plus people on there, then it was more of a question of where you're going to be wedged.
True. I look back at some of the pictures, and there's hardly any room for anyone on the balcony.
No wonder they've needed to resurface that place.
Yeah. How did you think the King performed? I mean, my understanding with the King, he was in a carriage with Camilla. My understanding is that he did want to ride a horse. He wanted to ride Noble, which is I
think he dodged a bullet there.
He dodged a bullet. And Noble was a little bit of a rascal by all accounts. But he was actually quite angry, I'm understood, that he was unable, that the doctor said to him, you can't ride a horse. He wanted to be on the horse. Yeah. So William was there. Edward was there and looking resplendent, you know, even though the rain came down, they looked absolutely incredible on their horses. But how do you think the King coped? Because it's his day. It wasn't the Princess of Wales's day. It was the King's day.
Look, we know, I think, enough about the King's approach to his working life to understand that he'll have been really frustrated by being told he can't do something. And you only have to look at the way he's been operating in the last few weeks. He's had a very, very busy schedule, even though they are making adjustments to take into account his cancer treatment. But he did remarkably well. You know, he was on the days for a very long time, and then back at the palace, taking that royal salute for a very long time in absolutely biblical weather. There was a sense towards the end of the balcony moment where it looked a little bit like the Queen was hurrying him back inside as if to say, come on now. It's time to go and have a rest. So it'd be interesting to see. But then he was out again the next day at the polo in the Cartier Queen's Cup. So this isn't someone who's going to just be sitting on the sofa and putting their feet up.
It's interesting you say about the Queen trying to usher him back in. I'll go back over the footage. That's really interesting because we know the Queen has said he's hard to control. Yes. He has to slow down, but it's good that she is. I think he probably does listen to her. I do wonder who was it that delivered the news to the King and said, you cannot ride a horse, and I just wonder what what reaction he got.
Well, it was interesting to see that even Princess Anne had a little bit of a struggle. Former Olympic horsewoman, noble, obviously very excited to be on parade. I wonder if we'll see him being as active next year.
Definitely. Who else was there? We had Prince Louis, of course. How can we forget Prince Louis? If anyone almost stole the show from the King's birthday and the Princess of Wales's reappearance in the spotlight, it was Prince Louis. We're becoming accustomed to this now, aren't we?
We are, and we almost expect it from him now. So we certainly were watching with bated breath to see what he'd do next. What I loved about this year was the interaction between him and Charlotte. And I got the sense that certainly on the palace balcony, maybe they'd had a word with Louis and talked about trying to rein it in somewhat, because he did look like he was concentrating quite hard. But at the Major General's office, he pulled out dance moves to Highland Laddie. There was a bit of shimmying going on, but just like any other 6-year-old. It's great to see that, and I think it's so relatable for parents up and down the country, that he's just like any other kid his age.
Well, that's the beauty of it in many ways. I do wonder when these young princes and princesses suddenly get told who they are, in this kind of hierarchical system that we have. At the moment, he's just being a normal boy. He's not there for our entertainment.
No.
He's just being allowed to be a child, and then one day become a prince. It's really nice to watch. So.
Well, and it really sort of speaks to the way William and Kate are approaching the upbringing of the children, doesn't it? They want it to be as normal as possible. Yes, they have incredible privileges, but they're, Kate in particular comes from a relatively normal background, and I think that she's able to share that perspective with the children in a way that perhaps royals from previous generations didn't have access to. Fair
enough. Just quick diversion onto other royals, Duke and Duchess of Sussex, or the Duchess of Sussex in particular. There was a bit of a furore on Saturday morning because she had announced, or a friend had revealed that she had made some more jam and some dog biscuits, and it was released on the day that the Princess of Wales was made, coming back into the spotlight. Do we care that she's done this? Is it people seem to get upset about it?
Look, I think the problem is that anything they do is either going to be praised or criticised to an extreme, because unfortunately that seems to be the way that people approach stories about them. The jam business is not new. Eyebrows are raised about the timing of that. And it was actually done through their very close friend, Nacho Figueres, who posted it on Instagram. The dog biscuits was new. That was a new line. Yeah. Waiting to hear more about that in the future, and whether that's going to come out of her new business venture. But it's interesting the way it's sort of being kind of drip-fed out. Is that going to mean that all eyes are on it when it officially launches? Or is it just going to be a slow burner?
Well, I don't think releasing dog biscuits on the day of the Princess of Wales's, appearing at Drooping the Colour is going to steal any front.
I don't think it ruffled any feathers.
It certainly didn't. Talking of feathers, plumes. Plumes in hats this week.
I know.
We were both at Garter Day.
It was windy.
Yeah, it was windy. Now, to the untrained eye, Garter Day looks a little bit medieval. So even to the trained eye, two people who sat there and watched it all happen in folders, it also looked a little bit medieval.
Because it is, Matt.
It is.
Yeah.
But looking into it, it's the highest order of chivalry. And so the King and the Queen and Prince William and the Duke of Edinburgh and Princess Anne were the main royals that were leading down. Did you enjoy the day there? Did you get the sense of why people were there? Because there was a lot of people. They queued for hours to see it.
It's a real spectacle, and it is quirky, and it is might appear a bit eccentric from the outside, but I think it's kind of what the monarchy does best in this country. It brings that sort of pomp and pageantry, and it is unique. There can't be any other. Well, there are a few other countries where you'd be continuing a tradition like that that's 700 years old. Yeah. Honouring people. And I think it's interesting as well that they are appointing people who aren't necessarily, hereditary peers or aristocrats now. We've got a few former prime ministers. You had Lord Lloyd Webber yesterday being honoured as a Knight of the Garter or a Companion of the Order. And it's an unusual one for sure, but you can see why. If you're coming to the UK and if you want to go to Windsor and see something quintessentially British and quintessentially royal, then you can't really do much better.
No, I completely agree. And it's always sunny on Garter Day.
Yes.
And you can get in. As I say, there was huge queues. And across the lawns, we saw there's so many people camped up with camping chairs just to watch.
Picnics and
And you don't see much.
No, you don't. It's the carriage ride past on the way back, which is really lovely. But actually, it's also the band music, the guardsmen. We saw one poor guy as well who succumbed to the heat yesterday because it's a bit of a sun trap there.
And they're there for a long time as well.
And I'm always a little bit worried about the knights and ladies who tend to be of advancing years, wearing a lot of velvet and a lot of feathers.
A lot of plumes and feathers.
A lot of plumes for June.
One royal who didn't wear his velvet robes, his mantle, or his plumed hat was
at least not in public.
At least not in public. Yes, this is Prince Andrew we're talking about. I mean, this is the highest chivalric order. Prince Andrew has not appeared in public. He doesn't take part in this public walk down to the chapel. He doesn't take part in the ceremony, but he takes part in the lunch and the investitures before. Should there be a stage where it's a high chivalric order that maybe the king should look at Prince Andrew's membership?
That's a good question. I don't know what, if any, system there would be to remove him from it. But look, I think what we've seen from the king, particularly at Christmas and a couple of other events in recent years, is that he has kept the Duke of York as very much as part of the family. He's there for the family events, and I think if he's taking part in things behind closed doors, it doesn't particularly bother me. I don't know how other people feel about it, but
sometimes we have to remember this is a family.
This is a family.
His brothers
this
and
is
his
his brother,
cousin,
and
he's punished him.
Yes,
in quite in so many ways, stripped him, taken away all his his roles and his patronages, and he can never be a working royal. Probably end up getting kicked out of Royal Lodge. So
exactly. So at what point do you say that's enough?
Yeah.
I think maybe here.
But I'm glad that he's not there because I think that would be.
I don't think it would be a good look. No. Absolutely not.
Don't go anywhere. There's plenty more coming up.
You want to get stuff done? She's your woman, I would say. I think she keeps an almost military timetable. The fact that we've seen Kate in action herself really suggests that they're making really good progress.
This week we have even more pomp and ceremony. We've got Royal Ascot.
Yes. Have you got your feathered hat out? I've
got my top hat and tails. Yep. One of the key things about it is that the king's going to be there almost every day. We were worried that when the late Queen passed, because she used to go quite regularly, that it might become less of a Royal Ascot. But why do you think the King, the Queen, Prince William, all these rules, why are they maintaining the royal links to horse racing, and what are you looking forward to at Ascot?
Well, I think that while we were told all along the King wasn't that interested, perhaps he is a lot more fond of the horses than we'd been led to believe. Don't forget, he played polo for many years. He was involved in various hunts. He's always been a horseman, so there is that natural affinity. But he's also inherited some incredible studs and...
He might win some money.
And horses, I mean, you only had to look at that win they had at Ascot last year, I think it was at Desert Hero, to see how emotional that was for him. And it wasn't just because they'd won. They'd won with one of the late Queen's horses, and this was really about him taking the mantle on and continuing her legacy. So it's great. It means so much for the industry because really without royal patronages and without royal attendance, it wouldn't have quite the cachet that it does. So I'm looking forward to seeing them arriving. It's always fun to see the carriage procession, them going around the parade ring, and then the photographs of them in the royal box. If they do get a winner, are always good fun, good value. That's
really interesting because I saw them I imagined them at Ascot. The King wants to be seen, so it's a really good way to be seen by so many people arriving. For 4 or 5 days that he's there. But I never really properly thought that maybe he is doing it in many ways as a tribute, following on the legacy of his mother. Yeah,
I think there is definitely an element of that, and also it's something he's done, for most of his adult life, and people like their routines in the same way they love to go to Balmoral every summer. It's a real fixture in the royal calendar. And it's, like you say, an opportunity to be seen. And I suppose we're going through an unsteady period at the moment with the general election. It's nice to have a bit of stability, somewhere we can rely on.
Definitely. We might touch on football a little bit later.
My favourite.
but you're a Wales fan.
I am
for
Welsh.
full clarity.
Yes.
You're Welsh.
Yeah.
The Euro's going on at the
So
moment.
I'm neutral this time.
You're neutral this time. But William's not. He's off to watch the Denmark game.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know someone else who's going to that.
I may be attending the Denmark game if my ticket arrives in time. But William of football, he seems to genuinely like it, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. I mean, it was interesting that for his Father's Day message to the King on Sunday, he shared a photograph of him having a kickabout with his dad. Although, admittedly, the then Prince Charles was wearing a suit. It's not like your average kickabout, but perhaps he was on his way to engagement. And I thought that was really lovely because you saw that for William, it was something that's been a big deal to him from a very young age. But he seems to genuinely have a real interest in the players. He takes his role as president of the FA really seriously, and he just loves the football. I mean, you've seen him in the stands at various matches. I'm sure he'll be cheering very loudly.
Do you think the fact that he seems to be doing more, I think a couple of weeks ago he did like 5 engagements in 6 days, he's able to go to Denmark, also able to go to Germany for the Denmark game, that is a sign, and Princess of Wales has gone to troop in the colour, that is a sign that things have improved with Catherine's health, surely.
Yeah, absolutely, because earlier this year, you know, we were seeing William perhaps once a week, and there were lots of caveats around, you know, how long he was going to be at an engagement, what time it would be. It felt like things were being very much tailored around his duties at home. And I think that the fact that he's out there more and the fact that we've seen Kate in action herself really suggests that they're making really good progress. So good to see.
Excellent. Now, what we do like to do on this show, you aren't just Royal Editor of Hello Magazine, you were also at The Sun.
Yes, I'm former Sun Royal correspondent.
Former Sun Royal correspondent and been in the job for... How long have you been reporting on the
Lady never
Royals?
tells, Matt. It's been a while.
It's been a while. So Emily's been a while reporting on the Royals. I was wondering if you could talk to us about any of your favourite memories, maybe on tours or anything like that people would like to hear.
That's a really good... actually, one of my favourite tours while I was at The Sun was with Prince Harry to New Zealand. So this would have been in about 2015, and it was actually a really fun trip. There weren't many of us on it. We'd waited for Princess Charlotte to be born and pretty much went from the Lindo wing straight to Heathrow and then over to New Zealand. And the reason it was so nice was it was a small pack of people on there, so we kind of spent quite a lot of time with the team, and we got to chat to Harry a fair bit, interviewed him for The Sun, and we found ourselves actually taking him on in a pub quiz in a place called Stewart Island, which is a small island off New Zealand. So that was quite a bizarre night.
Who won?
Well, controversially, he and his detectives won. I think that it may have been rigged in his favour. The quiz host was very, very much pro-Prince and anti-press. So,
I see.
Yeah. I don't bear a grudge, though.
Not at all. Excellent. But there's been other royals, I would assume, that you've been away, nice places.
Yeah, yes, I've done quite a lot of trips. I mean, one that stands out for me, again, just going back to trooping the other day, was Canada with the Waleses, and the first time I think Charlotte had been on tour, so she was just a baby in arms, a toddler, and there were a couple of really good moments in that, like Prince George refusing to high-five Justin Trudeau when they got off the plane. I mean, he was very little at the time, to be fair. But then also the children went to this party for military kids. It was just very, very cute and lovely to get a sense of their personalities, even though they were so small. Yeah, it's quite strange, like having watched them literally being presented on the steps of the Lindo wing and then growing up to where we saw them on Saturday.
We watched them grow up, don't we? We have a front row view on watching them grow up.
Yeah, and it does, I think, you know, it does make you feel a bit invested in them, as it does for the wider public, you know, definitely.
Excellent. Right, to wrap up, we have some fun questions for you. Yeah, if you are ready.
I'm ready.
This is for many viewers. This is their favourite part of the show.
Oh, good. Okay.
So, okay, Emily. Which member? Oh, sorry. So it's close to general election time here in the UK, and also presidential elections in the US. But here in the UK, which member of the royal family would make the best prime minister?
Princess Anne.
Princess Anne.
Oh, 100%. You want to get stuff done? She's your woman, I would say. I think she keeps an almost military timetable. But interestingly, everyone who deals with her from all her charities and organisations absolutely raves about her and the time that she puts in. I think she'd be amazing.
She would be excellent at Prime Minister's questions.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to stand opposite her.
OK, and we're back to the Euros. Obviously, we've obviously established you're neutral and you won't be cheering on England.
I will support them.
Support them.
I will.
Who would you trust to take a last-minute penalty to win the Euros final?
That's a really good question. I should probably say Prince William, but I'm going to say Prince George because I reckon he is getting in a lot more practice on the pitch than his dad these days. I'm guessing Lambrook is a very sporty school. And yeah, I'm going to go for Prince George. Who would you pick?
That's a really good... I didn't think of that at all. That's a really good idea because...
It's fresh legs.
We've seen him wearing England shirts, I believe, in some
100%,
pictures, some birthday pictures.
Yeah. He knows all the team. He's got to hang out with them. I think he'd fit in quite neatly.
And he might even be there.
He might even be there. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Yeah. One to watch.
Excellent. All
Get
right.
him on the bench.
Excellent. OK. And so if you could spend the day walking around any royal property with no limits where you could go, where would you go and why?
Oh, this is such a tough question. I love gardens, so Highgrove probably, so I could just potter around. But I think if I was being really nosy, it would be the private apartments in Windsor.
Right.
Just because of the history there. And yeah, there are so many things I would love to nose through. Not that it'll ever happen.
Well, you can get quite close. So when you go on the tour, if you're a tourist going through Windsor, it's just a couple of rooms away.
It is, and that's what's so tantalising about it. But it's the 1,000 years worth of history that's there as well that makes it, I think, really special.
OK. And final question. So if you could ask the late Queen Elizabeth II any question, what would it have been and what do you think would have been her answer?
Oh, does it just have to be one question?
OK, you can have two.
I would like to know who her favourite world leaders were. I'm really interested in the sort of diplomatic chat. Maybe that makes me a bit of a nerd, but that, and also just how much did recollections vary? But I don't think she'd ever answer.
Wow. Well, maybe we can... There are still other people that we could ask about recollections may vary.
Let's get on it.
Let's get on it. All right. We're journalists. We should be allowed to put these questions to them. Excellent. Well, thanks very much, Emily.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's wonderful having you on, so thanks for your time. Right. Well, thanks for joining us. Make sure you subscribe to our channel so you never miss a show.